Kevin Stefanski walked into Atlanta thinking his welcome press conference would be a clean reset. New logo, new quarterback, new city, but the reporters in that room didn't treat it like a fresh start at all. They came with receipts. Instead of soft questions about culture and what excites you, they dragged Cleveland back onto the table and forced Stefanski to answer for the Shedeur Sanders situation in real time. And the more he tried to smooth it over, the worse it looked. Because to a lot of fans, it sounded like damage control, not accountability. Now Atlanta is doing what Cleveland never fully did, putting the coach on trial before he even coaches a game. Social media is already in full revolt, local radio is spiraling, and the pressure is shifting from "fans are mad" to the only thing an owner can't ignore: money. And if the rumors about emergency meetings upstairs are even half true, this hire isn't just controversial. It's unstable. The tone in that press conference told you everything before Stefanski even finished his first answer. He walked in trying to sound polished, measured voice, careful wording, the usual "I'm excited to be here" script. But the room wasn't buying a script. Reporters kept circling back to one thing: Cleveland. Specifically, the way Shedeur Sanders was handled, talked about, and depending on who you ask, boxed in. And that's where it got tense fast. Because this wasn't a normal "what would you do differently" question. It was more like, do you realize people think you tried to bury a young quarterback, and now you're standing in Atlanta asking us to trust you with Michael Penix Jr.? That's not a football question, that's a character question. And you could tell Stefanski understood the danger, because every answer sounded like it had been rehearsed with someone whose job is to keep brands from catching on fire. He didn't attack Shedeur. He didn't fully admit wrongdoing either. He tried to ride the middle, take a little responsibility, give a little context, say a lot without saying anything that could become a headline. But the problem was, the headlines were already written in people's minds. Atlanta fans didn't need a viral clip to feel suspicious. They watched the Cleveland saga from the outside for months. They saw the narratives about Shedeur's attitude and entitlement. They saw how quickly local media coverage can turn on a quarterback the moment a coach needs a scapegoat. So when Stefanski got pushed on it today, fans weren't listening for a perfect apology. They were listening for one thing: did he actually learn, or is he just better at explaining himself now? And that's why the press conference didn't calm anything down. It poured fuel. Because the moment a coach has to start defending his integrity in his first week on the job, he's not coaching football anymore. He's coaching perception. Every sentence becomes evidence. Every pause gets analyzed. Every "we're moving forward" line sounds like a dodge instead of leadership. Then the reaction spilled out immediately. Radio shows, fan pages, group chats. People weren't debating play design. They were asking the same question over and over. If he handled Shedeur like that in Cleveland, what happens the first time Penix struggles in Atlanta? And that's when this stopped being about a press conference and turned into something bigger, because reporters didn't just ask tough questions. They gave Atlanta fans a reason to organize. What made today different wasn't that reporters asked tough questions. It's that they didn't ask them in the abstract. They came loaded. People in that room weren't just referencing last season like a blurry memory. They were pulling specific quotes, specific podium answers, and specific moments that fans have been arguing about for months. The kind of stuff that lives forever online because it's on video. And once those clips get brought up in a new city, it stops being Cleveland gossip and starts looking like a pattern that followed him. That's the trap Stefanski walked into. Because a coach can usually survive criticism if it's just opinion. I don't like his system. He's too conservative. He's not creative. Those debates come and go. But when the conversation becomes, "Here, what you said then, and here's what you're saying now," it turns into credibility. And credibility is the one thing a head coach can't play without. That's why Atlanta fans reacted so fast. They didn't wait for the media to summarize the press conference. They clipped it themselves. They compared it to old Cleveland answers. They started building threads showing the contradictions they believe they're seeing. How Shedeur was described in public, how the rep distribution was talked about, how criticism seemed to appear at convenient times, and how the messaging always felt like it protected the staff first. Now, to be fair, none of that proves intent by itself. A lot of it is interpretation. A coach can make bad decisions without trying to hurt a player. But here's the problem for Stefanski. Atlanta doesn't care about giving him the benefit of the doubt right now. Not with a young quarterback in the building. Not with the city already sensitive to how black QBs get labeled when they carry confidence. So the press conference didn't just raise questions. It gave fans a structure. It turned random anger into something organized. Timelines, quote compilations. Remember when he said this? Posts, and a growing sense that the Falcons didn't just hire a coach, they hired a controversy with a paper trail. And once a fan base starts thinking in paper trail mode, the next step is predictable. They don't just argue in the comments anymore. They apply pressure where it counts. Because boos are easy to ignore. Receipts are harder. But the only thing that makes an owner move fast is when the receipts threaten the business side of the franchise. And that's exactly where this is headed next. Here, when the Falcons situation stopped being bad PR and turned into a real problem for the people upstairs, fans started talking in dollars, not hashtags. Because you can ignore angry callers, you can ride out a week of memes. But when season ticket holders start asking for cancellations, when sponsors start requesting clarity, and when the mood around your brand turns toxic before the schedule even kicks off, the timeline doesn't matter anymore. The balance sheet does. And reports claim that's exactly the direction this moved in after the press conference. Instead of just arguing online, groups of fans allegedly started organizing like stakeholders. The same people who have held seats for years, the ones who don't just buy one jersey but invest in the whole experience, started floating a simple message. If this hire represents the same pattern we watched in Cleveland, we're not funding it. That's the nightmare scenario for an NFL owner. Because the league is built on guaranteed revenue, season packages, suites, corporate partners, long-term renewals. When even a small percentage of the most reliable customers start hesitating, it signals a bigger problem. Trust is cracking. And once trust cracks, everything feels shaky. The stadium experience, the sponsor activations, the new era marketing campaign, all of it. This is also where the contract conversation enters. Fans keep asking, how much would blank have to eat if he fired Stefanski now? And while exact numbers get exaggerated online, the principle is real. Coaching contracts are expensive, and owners hate writing checks for people not to work. But owners also hate something more than buyouts, watching their franchise become a weekly controversy that scares away renewals. That's why the rumors about emergency meetings won't die. If there's even a hint that the front office is exploring options, it tells you one thing. They're doing the math, not just on Stefanski as a play caller, but on Stefanski as a brand risk, on whether the first year of the hire will be about football or about defending his character every time the QB hits a rough patch. And here's the twist. Once the money pressure starts building, the NFL's usual countermove is automatic. They try to calm the fans down through the national media. They send out the give him a chance messaging. They frame the backlash as toxic or emotional. They try to make the fan base feel irrational for reacting to something they believe they've already seen. But that strategy only works if the public doesn't have receipts. And Atlanta fans have been collecting them like it's their new full-time job, which is why the next phase of this story gets even uglier. The NFL has a predictable defense mechanism when a hire starts going sideways. Flood the airwaves with calm. You've already heard the talking points. He hasn't coached a game yet. You can't judge him off the past. He's a coach of the year for a reason. Fans are being dramatic. It's the same script every time. Turn the outrage into an overreaction and turn the coach into a victim of unfair expectations. But the reason that message isn't landing in Atlanta is simple. The fans aren't reacting to a rumor. They're reacting to a pattern they believe they watched in real time. So when national voices go on TV and try to scold the fan base, it doesn't calm anything down. It feels like gaslighting. It feels like, stop believing your eyes and trust the people who benefit from you staying quiet. And the moment fans feel like they're being talked down to, they stop listening. They start digging. That's why every "Give him a chance" segment gets met with comment sections full of clips. Old Cleveland podium answers, drives where the offense looked boxed in, quotes about development that didn't match rep distribution. Whether every clip proves sabotage or not isn't even the point anymore. The point is that fans have receipts that make the "nothing to see here" angle impossible to sell cleanly. Now, to be fair, not every criticism is automatically true. Some of it is emotion. Some of it is projection. A coach can mishandle a quarterback without some secret plan to ruin him. But the media doesn't help itself when it refuses to acknowledge why people are upset in the first place. Because Atlanta isn't mad over a bad third down call. Atlanta is mad because this hire touches on trust, power, and identity. A city that takes pride in Black leadership and Black excellence is not going to shrug off a storyline centered on a coach accused of undermining a confident Black quarterback, especially not when that coach is now being handed another young QB to develop. So when pundits say, "Judge him on what he does in Atlanta," fans here ignore the warning signs. And that's exactly why this is escalating. The more the establishment tries to shut the conversation down, the more it confirms to people that the conversation is hitting something real. Because if it were truly nothing, nobody would need a coordinated media campaign to defend it. And that's where the situation gets even more intense, because the biggest fuel for this fire isn't actually the press conference. It's the city itself, and what this hire symbolizes inside Atlanta. This story would be loud in any NFL city, but in Atlanta, it hit a different frequency. Because Atlanta isn't just a fan base, it's a culture. The city's identity is tied to Black influence, Black leadership, and Black excellence in a way that's impossible to separate from sports. So when a coach arrives with a cloud over him involving the treatment of a confident Black quarterback, it doesn't stay in the lane of football decisions. It becomes symbolic. It becomes about respect. That's why you keep hearing, "Not in our city," language from fans. A lot of people in Atlanta look at the Shedeur Sanders situation and see a familiar pattern the league has wrestled with for years. When a young Black quarterback doesn't fit the quiet, grateful mold, the criticism gets sharper. The labels get nastier. Confidence gets described as attitude. Control gets described as entitlement. And the moment something goes wrong, the story quickly turns into character instead of scheme. Now, to be clear, not everyone agrees with that interpretation. But the point is, enough people in Atlanta do that it changes the temperature of everything. Because if you're Arthur Blank, you didn't just hire a coach. You hired a narrative, and you hired it in a city that won't let narratives slide. And there's another layer that makes this blow up faster than normal: the Sanders effect. Shedeur isn't just a quarterback prospect. He's part of a sports empire. Deion Sanders is one of the most polarizing, influential figures in modern football. Whether you love him or hate him, he commands attention. And when a coach is accused of trying to humble or sideline his son, it doesn't stay confined to team media. It spills into pop culture. Celebrities weigh in. Influencers amplify clips. Casual fans who don't care about the Falcons suddenly care, because it looks like a power play against the Sanders name. So Atlanta isn't just hearing. Stefanski had a messy season in Cleveland. They're hearing, "This guy walked into Prime's house, tried to control the narrative around his son, and now he's getting rewarded with another franchise. That's why the backlash feels bigger than football. It's not only about wins and losses. It's about who gets protected in the league and who gets labeled, who gets second chances and who gets scapegoated. And if you think that conversation is only happening on Twitter, you're missing the most important part. Because the scariest rumors right now aren't about fans at all. They're about what's being said inside the Falcons' locker room, quietly, off camera, where the real trust issues live. The public revolt is loud, but the thing that would truly scare Atlanta's front office is what's being whispered about the locker room. Because players can't just hop on a podcast and say, "Yeah, we don't trust the new coach." That's how you get fined, benched, or quietly labeled as difficult the next time you hit free agency. The NFL doesn't even need to make an example out of you. The threat of becoming a headline is usually enough to keep guys on message. So if there's real discomfort, it won't show up in a press conference. It shows up in closed doors, players, only meetings, and the kind of anonymous chatter that front offices pretend not to hear until it starts affecting Sunday. And reports claim that's exactly what has people on edge right now. Not that the whole roster is openly mutinying, but that veteran leaders are allegedly asking the same question fans are asking. If this coach is being accused of mishandling a young quarterback in Cleveland, what happens the first time things get shaky in Atlanta? Because let's be real, this team is young, Penix is young, expectations are high, there will be rough patches, and when a coach has a reputation, fair or not, for turning quarterback problems into player problems, the room starts watching how blame gets assigned. That's the trust issue. Not whether Stefanski can design a run concept, not whether he can script a first 15. The real test is what he does when the offense sputters and the cameras start looking for a scapegoat. Does he protect the quarterback publicly and fix things privately? Or does the messaging start shifting, little by little, until the QB is carrying the heat? It's been said that some players have been careful about what they like, what they repost, and what they say on record, because they know how quickly any signal becomes a headline. That's why the fan protests matter so much. They're saying the loud part out loud while the locker room stays professionally quiet. And if you're Arthur Blank, that's the nightmare scenario. You can manage a loud fan base with PR. You can't manage a locker room that's already watching you sideways in February. Once players decide they don't trust leadership, you don't fix that with one good speech. You fix it with consistency over time. And time is the one thing a new head coach in the NFL never has enough of. Which is why the pressure isn't easing after the press conference. It's tightening. Because now this isn't just fans don't like the hire. It's the possibility, whether confirmed or not, that the most important people in the building are waiting to see if history repeats itself. And that brings everything right back to the top floor, where one decision is about to define Arthur Blank's entire offseason. This is where the story stops being about Kevin Stefanski and turns into a legacy moment for Arthur Blank. Because a fan base can be loud and still be ignored, a locker room can be uneasy and still be managed. But when those two things collide at the same time, the owner becomes the headline, whether he wants it or not. That's why the rumors about emergency, closed-door meetings won't go away. Reports claim Blank and Matt Ryan are already weighing options that owners usually don't even want to speak into existence this early. How do you get out of a brand new coaching contract before the first season even starts? Not because you suddenly forgot what his resume says, but because the optics and the trust issues are stacking up faster than the PR team can patch them. And the money side is what makes this brutal. Owners hate buyouts, but they hate a poison brand even more. If the season ticket pressure is real, if sponsors are truly uneasy, and if the locker room is even slightly split, the cost of keeping Stefanski isn't just his salary. It's the ripple effect. Renewals, suites, Sponsorship renewals, local partnerships, and the weekly circus of answering the same Cleveland questions every time the offense has a bad quarter. That's why some fans are asking the question out loud that blank is probably asking in private. What's cheaper, eating the contract now or eating the damage for an entire season? Because if blank holds the line and week 1 rolls around with Stefanski on the sideline, this doesn't magically disappear. The first interception becomes, here we go again. The first 3 and out becomes, is he doing it again? The first sign of tension becomes a national segment. And the Falcons can't build a new era while constantly explaining an old one. But if blank fires him now, it's also a disaster, just a different kind. It's admitting the hire was a misread. It's writing a massive check for a coach to go away. It's telling the league, we panicked. And it's resetting the entire plan for Penix and the offense before the playbook even has time to breathe. So blank is stuck with 2 ugly options and no clean timeline. And here's what makes it even worse. The longer he waits, the less control he has. If he keeps Stefanski and the backlash grows, it looks like stubbornness. If he fires him later, it looks like he caved. Either way, the story isn't Falcons football. It's Falcons crisis. Which is why the next few weeks matter more than any introductory speech. Because the real question isn't whether Stefanski can call plays in Atlanta. It's whether Arthur Blank is willing to bet his franchise's stability on a coach the city already doesn't trust, and hope the results drown out the noise. And what happens next might decide if this turns into a comeback story, or a warning sign for every owner in the league. And that's the part Atlanta can't escape. This hire isn't starting at 0, it's starting with suspicion. Stefanski can say all the right things, but the reporters brought receipts, the fans brought pressure, and now the owner has to bring a decision. Because if the city believes you mishandled Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland, they're not waiting to see how it goes with Michael Penix Jr. They're demanding proof up front. So now it comes down to Arthur Blank. Does he protect the hire and risk a season defined by distrust? Or does he cut bait early and eat the embarrassment and the money? Either way, the league is watching, because Atlanta is showing what happens when fans stop being passive and start moving like stakeholders. Drop your take. Should Blank ride with Stefanski and let wins talk, or end this before week 1?